total number of lives lost that we know of to 23 dead, including the 13 service members killed in the airport attack. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul asked Secretary of State Antony Blinken about that strike on Tuesday. Watch.
The guy the Biden administration droned, was he an aid worker or an ISIS-K operative?
The administration is, of course, reviewing that strike, and I'm sure that a full assessment will be forthcoming.
So you don't know if it was an aid worker or an ISIS-K operative?
I can't speak to that, and I can't speak to that in this setting in any event.
So you don't know or won't tell us?
I don't know because we're reviewing it.
Joining me right now is the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Secretary, it's good to see you this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Maria. Thanks for having me on the show this morning.
Your thoughts on that missed target drone strike killing civilians, innocents, the latest upset from this this withdrawal from Afghanistan that was obviously botched and not planned?
Well, Maria, it's obviously a tragedy that civilians were killed. To those families and those around them, their friends, my apologies. We pray for them. This is just another example. It looks like they were in a rush, they were in a hurry. You could see the political pressure. And if there was one thing that drove this failed evacuation, it was the arbitrary political deadline that President Biden set, the arbitrary cap on the number of troops that could be there so we could secure American departure and the departure of our equipment. Those things, these were all political decisions driven down to the military, and I'm confident that the military was under enormous pressure. President Biden said we're going to strike back at the folks who killed the 13 Americans, and we had a strike that clearly failed. It failed to deliver, to protect America, and killed civilians. This is just another piece of an evacuation that was driven by politics and not putting America first and America's national security.
Yeah, that's right. He wanted to have good headlines on September 11th to say, I brought everybody home, no matter what it took. Secretary, how do we get out of this at this point? We know that there are long-term consequences for abandoning Bagram Air Base. Secretary Blinken was interrogated over the last week in those hearings. What's next? How do we get out of this, and what is the future as a result of this misstep?
So it's very difficult to imagine how this administration is going to turn it around because they seem so deeply desirous of just making this go away, as if there weren't still Americans who were being held hostage by the Taliban inside of Afghanistan, if we still didn't have promises out to some of the folks who had helped us for these past 20 years. They just want it to go away. So I don't see how the Biden administration gets back from this space. I hope they'll begin to recognize that their credibility around the world was damaged deeply by how they executed this withdrawal, the failure to work alongside allies to deliver, make sure we got our allies and friends out of the country, and that we have abandoned a partner in a way that didn't deliver on security for our friends in the region as well. They need to find places they can show real resolve, determination, make clear that we're not going back to what we were doing for the last 8 years of the Obama administration, which is weakness on the world stage. If they'll do those things, we can improve our lot in Afghanistan and the ability to do counterterrorism in that region. And then there are a handful of tactical things. There are still fighters in Afghanistan. We should provide moral support to them as well. This was a takeover by a group of terrorists, and we should make doubly sure that we never recognize the Taliban as the rightful leaders of Afghanistan.
Well, this is a really important point that you're making, because this is what I've been saying the last few weeks. This was a coup. The Taliban came and took over Afghanistan. Are we supposed to be recognizing them as a real government, given the fact that this is a group of terrorists who are attached to other terrorists like Al-Qaeda, and they just pulled off a coup?
Yeah, there's no way we should recognize them. Think about this. I heard Secretary Blinken say there was no plan. No, there was a detailed plan. They just chose to tear it up and put a political constraint where we had a conditions-based security model for how we were approaching the risk from terrorism in Afghanistan. Just very different ways of thinking about the problem set. And so when you talk about this coup, this takeover, we tried to get all the players at the table. We had women's groups, NGOs, the Taliban, folks from the north, the Afghan government itself, all at the table trying to get a transition where we could someday, maybe it'd be 10 years, to get reconciliation among the Afghans. They just permitted the Taliban to throw all of that away, to throw normal diplomacy away, the hard work that we were engaged in, and allowed terrorists to take over this country. We shouldn't recognize them. And most importantly, Maria, and what I'm most worried about, is I think there may be American taxpayer dollars that are headed for the Taliban as well. We will bribe them, we will pay them, we will coerce them through using U.S. taxpayer dollars to convince the Taliban either to allow Americans out or for something else where we have no leverage today because of the decisions that this administration made.
And they've already been going through pellets of cash that we left behind, pellets of cash, as well as the $86 billion in weaponry. Was that a payment for the Taliban? Do you think we are going to send aid to the Taliban? I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary that the United States of America is being held hostage by a terrorist group, and we're supposed to make believe we think that they are the rightful government of Afghanistan.
Maria, the folks that are around President Biden today in his White House talking about foreign policy are the same leaders, right? A fellow named Brett McGurk sent $150 billion pallets of cash to the Iranians who are hosting the senior al-Qaeda leadership in Tehran today. They're the same people who have now reversed the Trump administration's policy, and they are now paying the folks in the West Bank who are conducting terror and paying martyrs to go kill people inside of Israel. It wouldn't surprise me if this administration didn't blanch at paying the Taliban, these terrorists, these massive violators of basic, most fundamental human rights. It wouldn't surprise me if they would use American taxpayer resources to exert leverage over them.
Unbelievable. Meanwhile, China waiting in the wings. We have been reporting on this program in the last couple of weeks that we understand China is negotiating a status of forces agreement to move into the Bagram Air Base, so strategically located near China, a very short distance from where the Uyghurs are locked up in the Xinjiang region, a very short distance from where China is expanding its nuclear facility. And then you've got this tweet from Antony Blinken. I want to show you this tweet. Put this up on the screen. In this tweet, he says, "We stand with the people of Hong Kong and continue to support their human rights and fundamental freedoms." A short time after this was posted, the State Department took it down. And they said, oh, it was a mistake. That tweet was meant for somebody else. And then this tweet was put up. And obviously, that key sentence was taken out. "We stand with the people of Hong Kong and continue to support their human rights and fundamental freedoms" was not in the replaced tweet of Antony Blinken, and instead it was put into the spokesperson's tweet, Ned Price. Your thoughts on what went on here? Did the CCP just pressure the U.S. government to not say we're standing with Hong Kong? Do we stand with Hong Kong?
Well, the simple answer to the last question is the most important one. The statement that Secretary Blinken originally put out is absolutely true. The United States must stand with the people of Hong Kong. Every day, always. We must demand that their rightful place that the Chinese Communist Party had itself agreed to for 50 years be restored. It doesn't appear that's where the Chinese Communist Party is heading, but the United States must continue to stand strongly with them, just as we do with the people of Taiwan. I don't know what happened. I don't know why this tweet was taken down. The original tweet that Secretary Blinken had posted was perfectly in line with what I believe the United States policy should be. So I don't know. I don't know if it was the craziness that can happen inside the State Department's bureaucracy. I certainly saw that. I can't tell you what the administrative challenge was, but as a substantive matter, as a matter for protecting Americans and putting our country first, simple statement by America's Secretary of State that we stand with the people of Hong Kong should seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah, even as the Global Times, the mouthpiece for the CCP, is promising that the U.S. is going to see another terrorist attack on its own soil in a different tweet. Why was the State Department running this Afghanistan operation and not the U.S. military? I know that under your watch, you created a special unit that could have played a significant role in terms of the evacuation effort, but a senior State Department official tells us that they disbanded that unit, all in the face of Americans being left behind.
Mary, we did create a unit. It was really well done. It was an important team that we had put together under amazing leadership. It was in response to what I had seen when I was a young congressman, when we saw an American diplomat killed in Benghazi, Libya. We knew we needed State Department resources capable of getting people out of harm's way at a moment's notice to be able to put resources on the ground. This administration will have to explain why they didn't want to follow us down that path. Look, as for why the State Department was in charge, it makes sense to put the State Department in charge of getting diplomats and resources out. But more importantly than who's in charge, in the end, the Commander-in-Chief is in charge. It was President Biden's responsibility to provide the resources and the political freedom and the space for our military and our State Department to make sure we got every American out, every American diplomat, every American citizen, and every American military personnel, and they simply failed to do that, and frankly are failing to do that even as we sit here today.
Secretary, real quick before we go, it is UN Assembly Week this week in New York. The next 2 weeks, the UN General Assembly begins, where President Biden will speak. He's going to be standing there on the world stage with allies and adversaries. What are they saying right now about this debacle as the U.S. also announces this submarine deal with Australia, a decision to cancel a multi-billion-dollar deal from the French in favor of U.S. submarines? Is that a positive?
Well, I'm happy about that. It's a good decision the Australians made. I think it'll be great for the alliance between the United States and the Quad. And obviously, this deal was with the Australians and the United Kingdom. Good on the administration for making that happen. Those American submarines will prove important in deterring Chinese Communist Party aggression. But Maria, they'll only do that. You talked about the UN General Assembly this week. That's a bunch of leaders coming to say words. That's great. It's important to hear what people are thinking around the world. But in the end, the leaders who saw what the United States has done with Iran, in Afghanistan, they see American weakness. We don't need more words from President Biden saying we're strong. We need demonstrable evidence that, in fact, this administration will continue to put American power in play. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much.